Start getting, hey everybody. We'll get started a couple minutes early if we can, once we get settled in here. We're doing the program first, if you haven't heard that yet, so that's what's going on here. Go ahead.
All right, sign the attendance sheet. If your name is on there, just put your initials, and if your name isn't on there, add it at the end, and that's good.
And we'll go, ready to go?
I'm ready to go if you are. John,
Mark, are you ready to go? Can you hear me?
You should be able to.
see if you can hear you.
Try it again.
Mark, are you there?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna get started. We're a couple minutes early, but everybody's here and settle
Okay.
down, and I know you wanted to move on to some other things, so.
Tell them what you're gonna plan, what your plan is.
We already talked about our plan, but I'm going to do a little introduction, kind of a summarize of what we did, because many of you weren't part of it, and then Mark's got the data and he'll explain his company and so forth about the analysis of it, but there's only about 10 slides, so program won't take that long. So Mark's ready. I'll do the introduction here. We're just quickly, thanks everybody who took part in it. There was 21 members who took part in it. Split roughly, I think 10 were 4 years or less, and the other 11 were 4 years or more. So we about half and half about that. Remember, the goals of this was try to understand blades and especially for the new members, and give people a chance to try some different things. It wasn't to find the best blade for everything, and there wasn't to find the best brand. That's not what we did, because, you know, you can go to these sheets. We picked 10 blades. Well, you could probably pick 50 blades. You know, you could do so much, but this was more to try different things. So don't. We ended up using 3 different companies. I bought them from Olson, Bearwoods, and Flying Dutchman. All blades were number 5s. We each cut the 10 ducks. Everybody got one of these with the blade. They cut that duck out with that blade. Then they're asked to evaluate based on the speed of the cut, fuzzies, burning, following the line, and smooth edge on a 1 to 9 scale. 9 is always the more desirable. So 1 is the least desirable. Everybody, I think we had 9 or 10 different kinds of saws, and I just asked everybody to set their saw at about half the speed and do it that way. So that's how we did it. I'm going to add, when Mark starts here, we'll let him take it. I'm going to ask no questions as he's doing his presentation. I'm going to be filling in because Mark has no idea from a saw blade to a saw to, so try to interpret what we're seeing. I'm going to be filling in a little bit. If you have a burning question, maybe we save it to the end if you can. I know in the past we've done some of these Zoom meetings and all of a sudden the questions go crazy and we lose track of the presentation. And so I want to kind of make sure we get through that. But if something's really bugging you, we need to answer that. So, but I made some notes on each slide because there's some interesting things came up. So that, so that's it on that. And I met Mark about 15 years ago. His business was StatEase. They sell software and do training and so forth. And he helped our company. We bought his software, and we had kind of a tricky manufacturing problem that we did this design experiment, and it actually solved our problem. So it was well done. He's a great communicator, and I think he'll make this. We aren't going to get in the depth of P whatever and T this and all that in the depth of statistics, but we're lucky that he took his time to do this. And this all started when I talked to him about almost a year ago, and I called him out of nowhere. I haven't talked to him in 10, 12 years, and asked if he'd be interested in doing something like this. And he said, yeah, he loves doing this sort of thing. So plus he's going to write up a little paper for his blog or whatever. So when we get that, hopefully we'll get a copy of that. So anyway, Mark, I'm gonna turn it over to you if you'd like to.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, it's a really fun to work on a project like this. I'm constantly talking to people in industry.
You can share screen.
Share
Mark,
screen.
Mark, would you
Yeah, I
share?
will. Yeah, yep, I will.
Okay.
Can you see me on the screen? I'm just kind of introducing, but yeah, I'll share the screen. But anyways, it's a labor of love to work on helping experimenters, but it's especially fun when it's a fun project like this. So let's see. I'm going to stop the other people sharing and go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so now you should see a lot of data, and it begins with John Engler. Do you see that on your screen?
Yep.
Okay, so what this is what's called a simple comparative experiment. It's really just one factor, which is a categorical factor, and it's the different types of blades that John mentioned he had bought from the 3 different suppliers. And these are identified just 1 through 10, but there's a key that John has. And so he can tell you more about which blade is which. But I just worked with the blade number. And then, like John said, he worked through this and had 21 people work on it. And you notice that there's a kind of a black line between each person. And this way I can take away the person-to-person differences. It's called a blocking statistically, which is really important to focus on what happens within each person and kind of pool together to get the strongest idea of, whether these blades really differ and how they differ in terms of the different attributes that John mentioned, the speed of cut, the blade jumping, fuzzies, etc. Then one other thing before I pull up the slide deck is that the order of how each person use the blades, differs by person. And this is an important consideration because there's a learning curve. And, you might, as you're cutting this duck out, get better and better, by blade, even though it's not really the blade, it's just you learning how to deal with this particular pattern. So randomization is a key, and luckily John is a former quality manager and had worked with me on some projects, and so he was really keen to engage me, and then he did an outstanding job of laying out this experiment and getting it done. So and then all of you that participated, my hat's off to all of you. So now I'm bringing up the slideshow, and I'll begin from the current slide. Okay, so then again, just to make sure we're working here, do you see the John Engler and all scroll saw blade experiment?
Yep.
Okay, and then as John said, I'm gonna have to say I'm pretty ignorant of sawing in particular. In fact, I had a little handyman phase early on, and then one time I took the saw and I wasn't paying attention to the cord and I cut right through it with a giant spark. And after that, I just quit. So that was it. I realized that you shouldn't be giving me a saw at all, but I do appreciate, craftsmen like yourself that can use this and create all these wonderful things, because I've had a chance to see John, talk to him, see some of the work that he's got in his basement, and it's quite impressive. I do have one clock that is wonderfully scroll sawed that I picked up at a craft fair down in Shakopee, I think one time in my home, and so I do appreciate that kind of work. But my background is actually chemical engineering. I do have a certified quality engineering, so those are some of my credentials, but not sawing. So I thought I would start with some comments, because you'll see as we go along how some of these comments actually are pretty good, considering they didn't have the data to work with. They were just looking at their own individual results. But for example, Steve said, kind of tongue in cheek, that he thought blades 8, 9, and 10 were a cut above the rest. And I love puns like that. It turns out he was mostly right, as we're going to see. This went much better for me than I thought it might, and I learned some things about blades and blade speed along the way. This was fun, Helen said, which is awesome. That's the way to go, is to, get some data together, but have fun while you're doing it. And then Warren observed that there was a big difference between some of the blades for sure, which is correct, as you'll see. So it'll be interesting to see when I pull up the next slide here, you'll see some of the results coming up in just a minute. But then just finishing off some of these comments was Steve thought that most of the blades perform well. But number 7 was jumpy and noisy, but produced the fewest fuzzies. Well, 7 you'll see does kind of stand out. So that was a good observation by Steve. And then my favorite blade was number 3. I'm pretty sure it was an Olson PGT and so forth and so on. Well, it turns out 3 actually ends up in some regards being the overall winner. So I just really impressed by these comments. So it just shows me that you know what you're doing. So here we go then with the first attribute, which is the speed of cut. Now these are ratings, and there's a scale that we call a sensory or hedonic scale that's used a lot in the food and beverage industry, but it could be used for any kind of sensory where you're applying some kind of a judgment call on something. And typically it goes from 1 to 9, where 9 is the best and 1 is the worst. And that way there's a 5, which is kind of in the middle. And so it works out that 9-point scale, sometimes a 5-point scale, but 9-point scale works out really well. Now, there's a lot of red dots on here. Let's say for blade number 1, which is that first column. But you'll notice there's a black square. That is the average of all the results for blade number 1, right? So by focusing on the average, we can cut through all that noise. And then this bar is a form of what's called a confidence interval. Some of you may be aware of that. It's set up to show, you know, that the results, even on average, we're not absolutely certain about. The average could be somewhere between the top and the bottom bar. But what we're going to look at here is how there's separation of bars. For example, blade number 3, as I mentioned, and one of you observed, that one stands above the rest. However, if you kind of cut across here, you'll see that 8 and 9 kind of fall within that interval. So that statistically, we really can't say they're different, even though, you know, blade number 3 was a winner for the speed of cut. So that gives us kind of a grouping up here, and maybe there's kind of a grouping up here of the best blades regarding the speed of cut. And then at the other end of it, well, there's a lot of overlap, but you could maybe make some conclusions, like, for example, 6 is worse than number 10, that type of thing. So you can use these bars to kind of pairwise compare if you were interested in it. But it does come out very significant overall that these blades did differ for the speed of cut. Then I'll
Mark,
want to throw in
can
at
I
this
step
point.
in here quick?
Yeah,
Mark?
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just explain. Number 3 is that precision ground that Steve thought earlier. 8 is a modified geometry, and 9 is another, I forget, it's a skip reverse from Pegasus. And so the ones, so the reverse tooth, let me just see here, it's well, I don't know if that matters for speed of cut, but
That was number 7, I think, wasn't it?
yeah, the double tooth ones came up the slower ones. That's 4 and 6. So those are the double tooth blades. I always thought they were more aggressive. Apparently not. They're slower, but I remember we're doing this one kind of wood, and you know, so some of these blades aren't meant for this apparently. But I mean, that just, those 2 are the double tooth. Number 1 is just sort of on its own. It people who you did it cutting, I heard a lot of complaints about number 1. So you could see the spread is the biggest too. That, you know, somebody gave it a 1 and somebody gave it an 8. You know, so we're like 3. There's much spread. So that's what these dots are. Somebody, you know, this one had 3 people. So anyway, that's that. So I don't think that surprised me. I don't know if it surprised anybody else. Those blades are made for that. They're aggressive blades. And I know one of the comments was, they pointed out 3 and 8 were so aggressive, I had to slow up my cutting. So they ended up rating them slower because they had to slow up because they're so aggressive. So for the right thing, obviously. For cutting ducks, they're pretty good blades.
Yeah, no, that's good observations. And of course, the knowledge of what these blades are, trying to explain things from a subject matter perspective is really vital. I'm just crunching some numbers and just saying, you guys really were able to, on average, see a very significant difference, in terms of speed of cut. And so that's interesting to see from a numeric point of view. Now for the blade jumping, your eye gets drawn right away to number 7, doesn't it? Number 7 definitely drops down. And really, there's a lot of overlap between all the rest of them. I don't really pick out a clear winner, but definitely blade 7 is a loser for the blade jumping.
Well, number 7 is an ultra reverse. Every third tooth is reversed. So it's supposed to help clean it up, get a cleaner cut, but clearly people have more trouble controlling it. Because all those extra teeth going up must be making it bounce some. So,
Right.
And so it was, so I guess I didn't predict that, but it makes sense after we see it. Because all the rest are kind of the same.
Right. And also, going back to the beginning in terms of how many people were testing this and just looking at the spread of the red dots, it's really amazing how statistics can cut through all that variation and really come up and say there's definitely a significant drop, in the ratings on average. So that's the power of statistics, is cutting through that noise and detecting the signal of what's going on. And then the fuzziness, and I think you were hoping that 7 would come out then less fuzzy, but it kind of falls in line with everything else. And there still was a significant difference here. And some of these blades, well, there's, if you start comparing pairwise, you kind of just keep finding that one is overlapping with another, but even so, overall, you might pick out, some at the top here, which maybe 3, 8, and 9 might be, again, although, 6 doesn't look too bad. And then there's, some that are not as good. So maybe you can kind of stratify, in terms of the fuzzies, like something like that.
This one, the reverse teeth, which should be the better, most of them were reverse teeth, 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So the ones without the reverse teeth, you would expect more fuzzies on them, and that's 2, 4, and 10, which that's what we see here pretty much, right? We got 2 down here.
Oh, right, yeah, 10 drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple other ones in there that should have been better, but I guess it shows what we expect. If we don't have the reverse teeth, you should expect more fuzzies. And I know, so.
Okay.
Saying more lower, yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure what happened on number 5, but that's a reverse tooth blade, but.
Okay. And then you can see another differentiation here on edge smoothness. And I mean, there seems to be a pretty consistently good rating again on 3, 8, and 9. Again, stand out perhaps. And 10 is another one. Again, on this attribute is dropping off. Maybe that's related to the fuzzies. I'm not sure.
But just I want to put something in perspective too, that this is 6, 5 is the middle. So even all of these are everybody rated above average, pretty much, except for some people. But so
That's true.
That these are better, but they're not that much different, really. You're talking about a 7 point something versus a 6 point something. So over 21.
And this is something, John, that I'm constantly bringing out. I'm also a master of business and ran the business for many years. If somebody says something significant, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I want to know, is it important? Really important things that matter, in the end. And it's not really the statistical significance at all. But obviously, if you're going to react to something, you don't want to react to something unless it's significant. And hopefully it's got to be important. So ideally, of course, you'd have both, but just the one without the other doesn't really mean much. So you guys have to gauge you know, how important this is. And ultimately, I'll pull up a cost schedule. The cost would have to come into play, of course. And then this is the burns, and I don't know what happened, John, you might be able to speak on this, but one definitely fell off, and then maybe 5. And then there was a lot of them that were just kind of, you know, at the top of the scale, basically. There wasn't an issue.
Well, and I didn't have this as a factor at first, but some of my test pilots were finding some burning, so then we added it. It is interesting that the vast majority didn't have any burns, if you look at all those numbers up high there.
Right.
So, and number one is just an interesting blade. It's kind of a less expensive Olson that wasn't meant for this, but and so the burning, you know, we have different ways to get rid of burning. We know we put tape on the part. But why some had no burning and some had a lot of burning. I know there'd be a big difference in speed of the saws, because half on different saws is half, you know, isn't the same. So I don't know, or it's how fast you're going, right? I know once with Nancy was having trouble, she was cutting some things out and burning the heck out of them. I changed blades. So now you're good, and she's still burning, and I go over there and no burn, but I think she's just going so slow that it was heating up the wood. So what, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it's interesting that most of the blades didn't matter, but those two kind of showed up a little bit more. Number 1 and what is that, 5?
Yeah.
And number 1 is a big spread, like with people all the way from 9s down to 1s. You know,
Right. Yep, that's true. Again, you know, the spread on 1, which we saw in some other attributes, is greater. And then this one is not statistically significant, although possibly 7, you know, could be identified as one that didn't follow the line as well. I can't support that with the statistics, but like I was telling John, I've done these popcorn experiments at home, and I draw a line and the bars overlap, and the PHE statistician chides me because I say it was still popping, you know, all the way across, and that line is correct. So you can't say that because the bars overlap on either side. I said, I'm saying it because I was listening to it. I was standing there, and I've had the same reaction to some other studies where I've looked at how long it takes to drive to work, and, you know, the function of coming in at the start of the rush hour, and the time gets really long, and statistician says, no, you can't say that. I said, yes, I can, because I've been driving from Stillwater to Minneapolis for over 20 years now, and I know darn well when I leave at 7, the time goes way up. But based on the amount of data I had collected, I couldn't prove it or publish a paper on it. But nevertheless, this is where, like, number 7, as from wearing a statistical hat, I'd have to say I can't necessarily say that's different, but you guys might be able to say that because you know something about blade number 7 and why it doesn't follow the line as well.
We did have a chance. This one might be worth looking at from new scrollers to more seasoned scrollers sometime. Maybe I'll dig out that data and see if there's something there. Because there's a big spread. We got people down giving it a 1, basically, some of the.
Yeah.
I mean, really having trouble following the line where they, you know, I personally didn't think any of the plays were hard to follow the line. So it might have to do with experience or something else.
Right, because you did, and that was great that you've got that data in the background, which I didn't try to drill down on, but you could go back. Obviously, the equipment depends on the skill of the practitioner. For example, golfing, I can spend, you know, several $1,000s on clubs and it wouldn't make a darn bit of difference. I might as well just, you know, pay $100 for the clubs because I'm not a very good golfer. But, you know, if you're a professional golfer, that would make a difference. So putting that demographic in adds some perspective, because certain blades might be better for newbies and other blades for, you know, more experienced scroll sawing. So that one, yeah.
Or change their speed or whatever. But
sure,
anyway.
maybe there's some other adjustments, because we just looked at one thing, which was the type of blade. And there's so many other factors. And normally when I'm doing designed experiments, I'm talking about what are called multi-factor, because oftentimes there's interactions. Which blade is the best depends on your experience, for example, or the process you follow. And so it becomes, a lot more complex when you think about all the factors that are involved. And so then in the end, I just said, well, overall, if I just say we would like to, get to the highest level on all 6 attributes, and overall, what came out the most desirable, and this is just a scale of 0 to 1, it doesn't really mean anything. And those numbers are just the number of points that are underneath the square, including the square. So that's why I was number 22. John caught that right away. I can click through it and I can get, identification of each of the individuals if I wanted to. I could drill down, but that doesn't really matter. So basically, and now we don't have the bars on this one. There is nobody's invented that yet, but you have to keep in mind, of course, results are actually varying. But I thought it was pretty clear that blades 3, 8, and 9 came out the most desirable overall across the board. And then I noticed when in John's cost table here that 3 was a little bit cheaper than 8 and 9. So I just highlighted that, kind of thinking maybe that would be a good choice, but it may not be, depending on, as John said, the type of wood, what type of woodworker you are, a lot of other factors. So what do you think, John?
Well, on what, as far as?
I mean,
Number
with number 3, would you say that that is a winner? I mean, if we're just only looking at these results based on that they're
Yeah,
it's a
3,
tie.
well, yeah, based on the price too, 3,
Right.
8, 9 are kind of the same, but the
Right,
price is quite a bit different.
right.
And none of this either, we didn't look at how long blades last either. How many ducks could you get out of a blade
Oh,
and so forth.
well, that's true.
Like number 1 probably get about a duck and a half, but
I see. Okay,
but 3 and 8 probably go on for several,
I
but
see.
my experience, but
Okay.
um,
Well,
but yeah, surprising the price. And these prices are what I paid for with the gross, bought a gross from each one of these suppliers, and that was the gross price. So I guess I was surprised. Those bare woods ones are the bottom 3, 8, 9, and 10. They're a little spendier.
yeah.
Um,
So I think, I mean, this is really a pretty narrow study, obviously, just on blades, all these other considerations of the type of wood, the pattern, how long did the blades last? I mean, you guys can go on and on with that when all is said and done. But I think it just goes to show that you can take something that's relatively subjective in terms of, these attributes that you're looking at in terms of following the line and fuzziness and burning. And yet you can develop something that I think is pretty compelling, using the idea of a planned experiment and using averages of results and statistics. So I would just say, as consumers of a lot of different things and not just blades, that just be discriminating, if somebody says, well, this is better than that, I always say, well, show me the data because, if one person tells me something and if they're an expert on it, I'm gonna take that to heart. But at the same time, if there is any, actual studies done and it's done properly, I'd be interested to take a look at that as well. So that's kind of my final word on this whole project, but I just thought it was a lot of fun and it was cool that we were able to see significant differences like this that you guys probably can explain.
We got a few minutes. Are there any, let's ask for a few questions here. Anybody got any?
What was
Any
number
questions?
3?
Number 3 is precision ground, Olson. Yep,
Do you have a list of the size of the blade?
they're all 5s. Oh, as far as thickness and teeth per inch and all that, yeah, I do.
They're all 5s?
These are all 5s.
You sure? I mean,
Yeah. I'm sure, 100%.
number 2 seemed a lot thicker than the.
Well, not number 2. Number 3 is thicker. The precision grounds are thicker. They're 18 thousandths and the rest of them are all like 14, 15. So it is thicker. It's heavier blade.
But they're all number 5?
Yeah, they're all number 5. Honest to God.
What?
I was,
It was a 10.
Some people thought I dulled number one on purpose, but I didn't, I promise.
What was number one?
It's an Olson skip reverse. It's one of, but yeah, if you look at it, they're
Oh,
not,
it's a skip to the blade. With
yeah, reverse too, but it's, yeah, one of their lower end ones, I think.
Is this gonna change your purchasing?
No.
I doubt if it'll change anybody's purchasing if you've been doing this a while. No, I tend to use a lot of precision ground when I'm cutting things like ducks and things. But I know a lot of people are big on the modified geometry, and that's number 8. You know, so there, I guess we've all fallen into, just by our own experience, sort of, we know this result based on our experience, but.
I don't use any.
Yeah, so if you do fret work or whatever, you don't even touch a 5, you know, they're too, yeah. And by the way, Tim took part in our experiment, and that he just joined. He didn't even have a saw when he did this, so. So.
Did it by hand?
We did have 5, we had, I don't have it right in front of me. We did have 5 blades break too along the way.
That's what I was gonna ask, is how many people broke blades? And
I
know
think there was,
My counterpart broke some.
yeah, there was 3 or 4 broke blades, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was missing
Yeah,
some.
Tim was,
I don't know if,
I don't know if I have that data in front of me here, but, yeah, I think it was, I did write that down. Oh, 5 blades broke out of 210. 2 were 8s, 2 were the modified geometry. 1 was a 2, 1 was a 4, and 1 was a 5. And I think the one you're talking about called was having trouble, and I just backed off on the tension. I think it was just over tensioning it a little bit. Brand new scroller, having a little trouble, so otherwise, and I think Troy, you had one break too, didn't you?
Do you think the, do you think that the reverse tooth blade are actually worth the extra money?
The which?
The reverse tooth blades
Oh.
are worth the extra money. Did they make that big of a difference? Personally, I don't think so.
I find they do. I get terrible fuzzies if I use it on a reverse blade.
See, no, I don't.
I think it's a good trend.
Okay, oh, we had a question in the back.
Yeah, your data shows that you have a statistical significance between those 3 blades and the others. Would you say, you know, as a matter of a conclusion, would you say there's a practical difference between them? In other words, did they perform that much better, or was it significant or a statistical margin?
Did you hear that, Mark?
well, I mean, it's statistically significant for sure. 3, 8, and 9, I definitely feel. However, is it important? Because like John was saying, you know, there's really not that much of a difference for any one attribute. So that's something that you guys have to gauge. It may not really matter, you know, that these did come out. I mean, because it's with a lot of data we've collected, we're able to see very small differences. And we can say they're statistically significant, but they could be unimportant.
You're asking my opinion? Again, it's depending on what you're doing. You know, I know the other day I had a 5 or a 7 precision ground in my saw, and I'll cut this little piece of plywood quick. And of course, it chewed it all up. You know, you have splinters all over. Well, that was a waste of time. So they're not meant for everything, but when I'm cutting TLC toys, yeah, I'll use precision ground. They last longer and they're quicker. You know, I don't want to take 5 minutes on cutting a duck. You know, I want to move them. So,
I'm having a little bit of difficulty seeing the cost factor, but
can you go back to the cost one there? Oh,
from a value perspective, would you say?
so look, can you read this, or I can read it for you?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
It's, the question is more generic. Would you say, based on this experiment, get what you pay for? Or would you say that that's not a conclusion?
I don't know, but you know, look at 2, 4, these are all, I think these are all pretty usable blades. We've all used them, all these. And they're all kind of in, what's 4 is 275, 431. I think it's 1 through 4 with the Olson. 5 to 5, 6, and 7 were the Flying Dutchman. So they were in that little over $4 range. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you get what you pay for on it? It depends, I don't know. Depends what you're cutting, I guess. Yeah,
I think the bottom line is, don't be afraid to try different blades.
Yeah.
If one doesn't work, try a different one.
yeah.
Until you find one that works. I've done that many times.
I think I
I
talked
guess it's
before.
difficult to draw
Don't be afraid to change.
a value comparison because, bleed light really is the factor.
That's the thing you'd have to do on your own. I thought about adding a blade life, but it just got too complicated.
You probably don't have enough data, meaning that this experiment is for 3/4 inch pine.
Yeah,
You know, it depends on what you cut, how thick.
yeah, and it was to get people a chance to try double tooth and
Yeah.
reverse tooth and all that. So,
It's neat, but I don't think you can draw it overall.
but my experience would say the precision ground and modified geometry lasts the longest. And depends what you're cutting, right?
Available, which blade is on which.
What's that?
Just find which blade is which somehow, so that.
I can tell you. And if people want to order any of these, I'll give you I can give you the information. I just didn't want it all published. I don't want it out there on our website and that the club says Olson is best, I don't want that because that isn't what we are doing here. And, we don't want enemies from, these companies. So, but if anybody wants to know, yeah, I want to buy some of those, I'm glad to give you.
Well, could you?
Number 1 was, a skip reverse from Olson. Number 2 was also a skip tooth, so no reverse teeth. 3 was that skip reverse precision ground. 4 was a double tooth, but no reverse teeth. The next one I had is Mike's Workshop or Flying Dutchman reverse tooth, so that's a skip reverse. Double reverse tooth was 6, so that should be a little slower than that, but 6, 4, 10. So they're all kind of the same as far as ratings. 7 was that ultra reverse. I don't know if that's was benefit. And what was it for cost? $431, kind of the same price. 8 was that skip reverse modified geometry. And then a skip reverse tooth bare woods. And then the last one was just a skip tooth, number 10, bare wood. So it didn't have reverse teeth.
So are you gonna send that list to us? Cause we'll never remember that.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to give you some information.
We could put it in the newsletter, right? We could take the slide deck and the different blades and put that into the newsletter, because that's only going to members.
Okay, I'll do something. I'll do something there. Any questions for Mark, or we'll let him go? All right, Mike?
Oh, when I started it, I thought, well, I'm gonna time myself, because it said time yourself. So I started out and I'm going, well, I'm gonna cut that perfect duck, see? So the first couple I cut took me 6 minutes, and I'm going, geez, we're supposed to be timing ourselves. So then I started speeding up. And eventually, after about a couple more, I got down to about 4 minutes, so. And it seemed to be about the same decency of the cut, so.
Well, I had the same reaction though that I remember Troy said that he had, where it was just, there was one blade that just was taking forever, and it was just, like, I had to push that sucker, and it was just like, oh my God,
Just the mechanics of what Mike's saying, I found that because happened to be as it turned out, the first blade on my list in the randomization was the one closest to what I use normally. And I was a lot slower, just the mechanics of starting your timer, then cutting the duck, and stopping your timer and recording it. By the time you got done, it was a lot faster.
Yeah.
Just the mechanics of doing the experiment, you get more efficient.
So this is I don't know, but was this duck have people in here cut this duck before?
I don't know.
Ever? So it was the first time you ever cut the duck, because otherwise it could be muscle brain memory of how to cut. as a person, right?
Yeah, I
If you
doubt if
cut it
anybody-
already.
Probably a lot of people have cut a duck, but I don't know if they did this one.
Right, that's what I was, that would be
The other
curious.
reason I picked it, one is they ended up at TLC, we didn't waste our time there, and then two, it had some tight curves, some long runs.
Right.
And you could cut it in 3-4 minutes. Or less,
Or six.
somebody could do, some people did it less.
People
There's a
get-
couple people were 2.5 to 3, but some were 6 or 8, it just depends. Anything left, Mark? Well, we can, I know you're down in Florida with your grandkids, any last questions for him, or I'll let him? Are you still there, Mark?
Yeah, I just, again, want to say, well done. Well done, you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Mark.
I did ask John if he would save one duck for me, and I'm hoping when I get back to Minnesota to meet him somewhere at maybe Lion's Tap or someplace between Stillwater and where he's at. I think he said Shakopee or someplace like that. So hopefully I'll get a souvenir out of this whole thing,
Get a couple of ducks.
Yeah, we can give you plenty of ducks.
because I got grandkids that'll paint them. So I got lots of grandkids. I got 11 grandkids.
We'll show you how to scroll saw too, Mark.
I don't know. All right, well, think about that. Just
You can't cut your cord in half with the scroll saw.
okay, if it's safe, if you make it safe, I might try it, but I'll develop some bravery first. But in the meantime, I'll just admire your handiwork.
Well, thanks for your help.
You're welcome. Okay, carry on, club. Take care now.
Any other quick questions or anything that,
John, how much did it cost you to buy a moose of,
I'll have to turn a bill in one of these days, but I,
what the hell?
There's just one thing I'll comment on. On Zoom, it automatically mutes applause. So
No,
you don't ever hear it when you see the audience doing this.
Do I get the lights again there, John? Anything else on that? We probably beat this to death over the last 4 or 5 meetings. I hope we found it interesting,
I think it was fun.
kind of fun to do. But like most people probably just do what they normally do, but you might open your eyes to that number 9. I might give it a try, but it's kind of expensive. So you need
that was
this.
interesting. Thank you, John, for all your work on this project. All right. Are there any new members here today?
I'm new, but not a member yet.
Oh, well, introduce yourself.
Everyone?
Introduce yourself. How'd you get into scrolling and how'd you find out about our club?
I just bought a Hawk 214
Yeah.
for $75. I'm a machinist and didn't like it, so I rebuilt it, so I did better. And I cut one puzzle piece,
All right. What's your name?
one piece so far.
What's your name?
Greg Adams,
Greg, and where are you from, Greg?
I'm from Lakeville,
Lakeville.
and Roger over in the corner there. He goes to my church and we got talking about businesses and he said, well, I do scroll sawing. Well, I've got one of those. Kind of gearing up for retirement.
Good, good.
So
This should be a good club and we're glad to have you. Thanks for coming in. Let's see. Any other new members? Looks like we're. Roger? You've been here before, Roger, right? Yeah. All right. Now, broken saw blades, Dave Gotti or Dave Gate, I don't know which one he preferred, passed away here February 21st. Now his funeral,
Yep.
and his funeral will be next Saturday, March 9th in Chaska. The visitation from 10 to 11 and service from probably 11 to about 12. Now, Dave was a member for quite a long time. It seemed like he was here when I started, and that's 9 or 10 years ago. So Dave had been around quite a while. Best be remembered for his sense of humor and his hat. And he always had that gray sweater on. Yep, and he had this hat. I wish we had the picture of the hat, but. And he'd make things, you know, just whatever he thought of, and he'd bring them in, and sometimes he'd cut up something and he'd say, well, I just redesigned it, and and he'd pass it off as something else. He was quite a character. Yeah, I miss old Dave.
That picture was taken when we went to Mountain Park Academy, and he was one of the four of us.
Yeah. Yeah, good guy. Secretary's report is in the newsletter. Steve, do you have anything to add? It's all good?
It's all good.
Treasurer's report, Helen?
Okay, we have, we started the month with 2,767.47. We collected a bunch of dues last month. And I deposited those, and so we have an ending balance of 3,222.47. And then we have $60.75 in cash on hand. And I will take dues from anyone that wants to pay them this morning after the meeting.
All right,
Okay.
good idea, thank you. Motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Roger, how about a TLC toy report?
We did 194 cars. That brings us up for the year of 487, which is pretty good. And our paintables last week, we turned in 383. And for the year, it's 529. So I think we're doing pretty good. Our numbers are coming up.
You got some more wood today,
We got lots of wood.
so help him out.
It's my car's gotta be empty when I go home, so,
All right, thank you, Roger.
and it's free.
It's free wood. Troy, do you have anything about the April program and maybe the tool library, if you heard anything from them?
Yeah, so for the April program, I've got the re-sign. The re-sign I'm working on, they're just all ready to go. That should be all ready to go for next month.
Yep.
And then I can still use one more person for April 27th at the tool library. Looking for an instructor. We have, we'll have a maximum of 10 participants, so 2 people per person. And like I said, I need one more person if you, I've got an extra saw. If someone wants to come, doesn't want to bring a saw, otherwise if you want to bring your saw, even better. But, and if I don't get another person, it's not a big deal. But I would like to get one more person if I can. So if anyone's interested, just let me know. We'll get you on the list, because right now I have Don, Katie, and Roger are on the list along with me. So if we get one more would be great, but if not, we're good to go either way.
Did they give you a date roughly?
April 27th from 3 PM to 6 PM. It's a Saturday.
Okay. Okay,
So we're gonna be doing a mixed class this time, so we may have some repeat, people who were there last time, and we got some more complex stuff for them. And some less complex stuff for people who are brand new, so it'll be kind of a little bit of a different format.
okay. Well, let's see. Do you want to take a 10-minute break here, or do we want to just power through? Get out. Take a break, raise your hand. Keep going.
Keep going.
Okay, keep going. All right. March is the month that we hold our elections. And so it's March, so it's time for the election for next year. John Engler will be conducting the election today.
So, here we are, 2009. I'm the self-appointed club historian, so I like to give a little bit before we do the elections. 2009 we started, so 15 years ago, right now. It's amazing we made it this far, right? Who knew? Who knew we'd be still doing this 15 years later? And so, you know, that's roughly 135 meetings, you know, that's a lot. And it's truly been the only downside of the club has been you meet people like Dave, they pass on, you know, that's part of it, but it's really been a good run. And I see a few faces that were here back those 15 years ago. Danny, John, Mike came on right away there. So, you know, so it's been a good run. So anyway, the way the elections will work, we got four officers that we elect, president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. The president then can nominate three additional, we won't do it at the meeting today, that he'll do that offline, three additional board members. And the board, according to the bylaws, meets, forget if it's supposed to be once a year or twice a year. I didn't figure out the bylaws. So we'll go through them one at a time. And if anybody hasn't been talked to and you've been just thinking all week, God, I'd love to be treasurer. I'd love to be, I'd love to be the president, you know, feel free. We'd love to nominate you and have an election. But so for the first nomination be open for office of the president. I know Mike has said he would do it again. So nominated, somebody like to nominate Mike?
I nominate Mike.
Second,
Second.
any other nominations for president? Feel free. We've had one actual election in 15 years, so. Hey, don't be holding him down back there. So it'd be nice to have another one. Okay, nominations are closed. All in favor of Mike Zink being president? Opposed? Okay.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for all this. Vice president. Nominations are now open. Troy has been our most recent vice president, and I think he has said he would
Yeah, I'll-
entertain doing that again. Would somebody like to nominate Troy?
I nominate Troy.
Okay.
I second.
Any other nominations for vice president? Vice president's main role is fill in as president for when he's gone, or and program has been kind of the main thing. All right, nominations are closed. All in favor of Troy being vice president, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, Troy. Thank you. Very good. Secretary, Steve Harder. Taking notes over there. Steve, I was told you're interested in doing it again this next time? Okay. Somebody nominate Steve? Second. Any other secretary? Obviously, the secretary takes the notes and gets the newsletter out. And any other interest? Katie, you look interested, no?
No.
I don't do the newsletter.
I don't know that, that's right.
That's Tiffany.
All in favor, Steve, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Treasurer. And treasurer, Helen has been our treasurer this past year. Helen is still interested in doing another year. Any nominations for Helen?
I nominate Helen.
I second.
Yeah. I've always.
Any other nominations? Treasurer, obviously, they keep the books and collect the dues and keep the roster, which is the hardest part of the job, is keeping that roster up to date. Okay, no other nominations, all in favor of Helen?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. Helen. The rest of you have a year or two. Now, all these people have done it 2 years or more, you know, so it's time to, you know, hopefully we'll see some new faces. I'm sure they won't mind. So if you think you want to do something, talk to any of us. Help you get on the board. And Mike?
You can submit your name to Mike for being on the board too, if you want to be on the board, right?
Yeah, sure. Mike. Yeah.
All right.
So many of you probably don't know, Mike was a president back, he was our fifth president, and then he took a few years off, and then he got back into it a year ago.
As John says, I'm the Grover Cleveland.
He's our Grover
president.
Cleveland.
We took a little time
Took a little
off.
break in there, so yeah, any other past presidents want to be back, do it again, and certainly do that, but anyway, thank you.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, we've got a good group now of officers. I think the next year will be just like the last year, and we'll try to do a nice job. Katie nominated me for vice president way back when. I didn't have any idea she was gonna do that, but this kind of led to me. A total surprise. And yeah, but it was all right. It got me more involved in the club, and being an officer isn't the worst thing in the world. You know, you get more involved. The president, he's got to answer all the emails. Secretary, he has to keep track of everything. The treasurer is keeping track of everything, and the vice president's gonna do the programs and then step up to president. So each one's a little bit different.
You didn't know that, huh?
Troy wasn't sure. You got a whole year to think about that.
Don't have any choice.
Yeah.
I like how it's just cajoling. Okay, well, Troy,
Troy,
you know.
You're just gonna do it again. All right, old business. Katie and I went to the Creekside Leaders Meeting here a couple weeks ago. And is there anything that stood out to you as far as this building? They're planning now to replace it and be open by 2027. Is that what you got out of it? So we'll probably be here at least another year. And then because of all the planning they have to do, get all the contractors, get everybody signed up and what this is going to cost. And then probably a year from now, they'll start tearing this down, and that's when we will probably get shifted over to City Hall or somewhere. The arts building, she mentioned. And so they have other meeting spaces, so we'll be okay, and they'll take care of us. Places like the shop, they're gonna have a problem because they're gonna have to just put their equipment somewhere, and unless they can find another, yeah, unless they can open up again. So it could be a while for some. New business. We got a Presbyterian Homes presentation that we've agreed to. The activity director over at Presbyterian Homes, which is just down 98th here, the next big building, she contacted me and wanted us to come over and do a little presentation for the guys. As she put it, the greatly outnumbered men. There were like 4 to 1 women over there, so they try to do something for the guys every so often. So we're going to do a presentation Thursday, April 4th, something like 11 o'clock. And so there'll be 4 or 5 of us, and we'll bring our stuff in. Warren's going to bring a saw, and we'll maybe do a little presentation as far as a slideshow for the guys. Carl and I are going to go over after the meeting today and check it out so he can see what kind of facilities they have. But it's a nice little room, their chapel. And so they have tables like this, but it's a much bigger room, and they've got a big projector there. So it should be quite nice. So if anybody else wants to be in on that, let me know. State Fair update. Don, have you got anything that you've heard lately?
Yeah, we've got something. I'll bring the ribbon out, because I want a ribbon so we can display it. And as a reminder, State Fair entries can be turned in at the beginning of May, and you can turn them in all the way until August if you're going to enter something in the competition. And we give away 3 ribbons, and that's important. The other thing that we do is we've been going to the State Fair to demonstrate for one day, and that's really a nice thing to do. It's fun outreach to people, and we get a lot of people to come and pick up stuff because we give away cutouts of small animals, and most importantly, the state of Minnesota outline. We give away that. There's a couple people take the trash, as John says, you know, the Wisconsin's what we throw away usually when we cut out the Minnesota. But they still come and get it, like to get those. And so remember to some of you do cut for us, cut those outlines for the state or the small animals, and the kids really like the dilemma that they get. It's fun to see them whether they want a chicken or a duck or
balloon and that, so that's important to give us something to hand out. And that's usually the first Monday of the state fair. So that's all I have, and yeah, Roger.
Right now, I think we've got enough of the state of Minnesota's cut out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we got close to, what, 400 between me and John.
Oh, wow.
We meeting, Roger.
Yeah. So we don't need any more, so we.
No, but we're gonna
You
need
can
the
always use-
animals. They can go either 1/4 inch or 3/4, either way.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. We got some patterns back there. Help yourself. So we should start get going on that.
Okay.
So
So
it's also fun to cut those things out at the fair, you know.
Yeah, it's,
Yep.
yeah, we'll have stuff we can cut out at the fair too.
yeah, we do cutting at the
Yeah.
fair.
When do we hear about if we have a booth? Do we know yet? We don't know for sure yet, do we?
No. There was a little, to explain, there was a little controversy last year.
Yeah.
Somebody had been in the booth that we were in. And inadvertently, they weren't there as early as we were. So we took the booth. That was the booth we had the previous year. We took over the booth. And then they didn't like the communication they were having with us. And so they went to the people who run the fair and said, hey, they have our banner and we can't get it. And so their banner was hidden down in one of the cabinets, and we didn't realize it was there. So they came in, they found it. So there was a little controversy there. But I haven't heard any other feedback since the day of the fair, so I'm pretty sure that we're still invited.
Yeah.
I talked to that, we went and looked underneath, it was underneath the counter, so curtains in front of it.
Yeah,
We didn't know there was anything under there,
yeah,
and so I helped her get it out, and we took it over, just, they had another open spot right next door, so that was not a big position, I don't think.
that lady was the lady who runs this, she's second in charge of the.
Oh,
I had to go get her from the office to come down,
oh,
because the other people weren't talking with us very much.
okay.
You
All
know,
we had to do was ask us, right?
yeah, all they had to do was talk to us, but
We did just,
they were, well,
didn't,
it was a sewing group, so they were just weren't intimidated, I think.
yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, it's a story. It's what happens. But again, we're trying to get a lot of competition, you know, last year, I worked really hard to promote here in the club to get people to put stuff in. And that's very important that we participate. And we don't judge it, it's judged by the fair, but it's important that we have, that there's stuff there for people to look at in the display cases, because that goes for the whole fair, and seeing more scroll sawing, I think, helps promote the art and get more people involved and seeing what they can do. So
All right.
that's it.
I know everyone come knock me off this year.
Pardon?
Knock me out of the coming to the fair.
Yeah.
All right. Katie, you've been working on the name tags. Would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, the people who asked for name tags last time, they're on the table there. And, I have some extra plaques, if you wanna have your name tag, give me your name today.
They look very nice.
Thank you.
Good job. Yes.
The club is paying exorbitant price for it. They're $1 a piece.
All right, let's have show and tell then. Who
How
wants
about
to
the
be
Girl
first?
Scout?
What's that?
The Girl Scouts.
Oh, Girl Scouts. Have you heard anything from them? Nothing? Okay. It's a little early yet. Normally that's late August, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually here by now.
We can.
Do you remember them
Yes.
saying anything like skipping a year? I thought she said that they were gonna do it every other year at
I
one
didn't.
point. Yeah, so I'll find out. I'll call her. Yeah,
Roger was at Rockler a couple weeks ago, and they mentioned to him that they wanted some cutting days this spring.
Yeah, they were talking the first 3 weekends in May. And I told Pat over there that the first one we have our meeting. He said, well, we would take the other two, but it's still up in the air. They're gonna contact us.
Okay,
I gave him our card.
with fishing opener.
Well, first weekend in May, I'll be fishing.
Bring your saw with you.
Heck
no. You got room.
Well, the first weekend in May would be probably Maplewood, right?
Well, he didn't know. It's still up in the air yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't know about Burnsville.
So if it's Burnsville, you'd prefer it was not
Yeah,
the first.
right,
weekend.
exactly.
Okay, yeah, cause it'd be fishing.
So that means you'll be at the meeting.
No,
It gets a little harder getting manpower in May than it is in February. or March. So-
I would agree with you.
So we'll,
Probably.
we'll see what they will do.
All right, well then, any other business that anybody has we haven't covered? Okay, let's do our show and tell.
Well, I think most of you know, I'm in the wood carving club down in Rochester. And this year, we're doing something a little bit different. We've challenged everybody in the club to carve a Dala horse. Now, you're probably familiar with these. This is a traditional Swedish horse. And it's not an overly complicated thing. I'd say carving this is about 75% scroll saw and 25% carving. So we're asking everybody to do it. And we said, we don't care what size you do it. You want to make them 1 inch tall, you want to make them 3 foot tall. Do whatever you'd like. You don't have to follow traditional patterns. You want to do it with polka dots. I've seen some done up with telephone receivers as the decoration on the horse. So we're inviting everybody in our club to do a Dala horse. They can do them, as 2D painted or chip carved or things like that as well. And in our April meeting, we're going to have a video about what the history of Dallas and stuff like that. And we're asking everybody to bring their horses to that meeting. Well, before that, I'm still working on one. This one's got a lot more painting to go on, but I've done a whole set of different ones to sort of get the juices flowing. These are a bunch of little natural cherry and walnut and aspen ones. But before our April meeting, we are going to have our annual show. And we do a free show. This is going to be in 3 weeks, the 4th weekend of the month. And we invite everybody to come. It's a nice family event. No charge. We don't even charge the people that have the tables and things. One of the things we will have at the show this year are Dala horses. We're going to have a whole posse of Dala horses. Some people will have them on their individual table, but we'll also have a table set aside just so we can show off a bunch of horses. For the show, I encourage people, it's worth a trip down to Rochester. I've got some bookmarks with the times and dates and things. I've got a couple of the flyers. I don't need to take any of them home, so if somebody would like to have something as a reminder, and hopefully we'll see you guys come down there. You can play with my puzzles. You can see all the other sorts of carvings and stuff that the rest of the club does. So we invite you to come down in 3 weeks to Rochester and enjoy our show. So yes, Mike.
Now, Mike, you don't normally associate Sweden with horses. How did they start this?
You want the history?
Sure.
Basically, it started with the farmers that were isolated in their little valleys all winter. And so they picked up hobbies, and one of the ones was doing some carvings. They would make carvings like this, decorate them, and then in the seasons when they could travel, they would use them to help when they were trading for goods. And the dollar horses often became something that they would give an innkeeper or somebody that had a barn or something they stayed at. And they give this to the family so their kids would have something. So it started off as a little trade there. And at some points it actually became that the dollar horses were a type of currency. The idea spread across Sweden, and there's lots of different variants and things like that. But there was a single style that tends to go back to, I forget the name of the specific community, but it's Dala something or other, you know, like basically Dala Garden translates to, that has this main style of horse. And it's taken over as just a Swedish trademark at this
Sort of a
point.
symbol, actually,
Yeah.
in Sweden.
They look like they have no tail. Do none of them have?
The standard ones do not have tails, but often they paint little tails on them. So the carvings don't have tails, but depending how you decorate it, it might have a tail.
Hmm.
So hopefully we'll see you guys in 3 weeks.
Thanks, Mike.
I think John Engler said I was busy this winter, but I found some things to do scroll sawing this winter. This is actually from the Scroll Sawing magazine. It was in there a year ago. It's a Ukrainian artist that did this. It's called a fretwork flower pot, I guess. And so this is a 1/8 inch Baltic birch. You can stack cut those if you want. I just did this one. And then mounted it on this background. I thought it looked really pretty nice. This Ukrainian person is actually a paper cutting artist and a sculptor. And so I found that intriguing that she does a lot in paper and very large paper cutout things. The other interesting thing of this is that the background wood here is from a former member, Ray, I don't know his last name. Ray Tuma. We went to his barn and he was getting rid of all of his wood supplies. So that background made a perfect background for this cutting.
Yeah.
And as you know, I like to scavenge wood. So this wood frame is actually in the junk. Somebody was throwing out an artist easel. And I thought, man, that'll cut those legs into pieces. That'll make a perfect frame. So out of some simple thrown away wood, you can make some pretty nice little pictures for you. That's wood.
Yeah, oak. What kind?
I think it's oak.
I think it's oak.
Probably oak. Yeah.
Take it back there so Dennis can see.
I've got some of those boards from him too, and I don't think they're oak. I think it's okay.
Sort of a paneling that they fit together. Yeah.
Kind of a waviness to it.
So then, since she's a paper cutting artist, I thought, well, I was sitting by Warren at the State Fair a year ago, 2023, watching him cut out butterflies. I thought, how can you cut out these paper butterflies? Well, I've taken it up since then. And so this is the same design down to about a quarter size. And I take 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch birch plywood, put in about 30 sheets of paper, and then you've got those all taped together. You can cut out your 30 of these at a time. My wife and I enjoy sending people cards or giving out thank you notes. We just use something like this. Then I have, it's been a slow winter, even though it's not been winter. So this one is another one I cut out. And that again, do it the same way. You put your paper between your wood. And this happens to be a Dakota artist, a Native American artist, and she's here in the Twin Cities area, and her artwork is around the city. These are spring flowers, pasque flowers. And so that one, and then one more I've done. I probably have brought this one here before. This is a Sheila Landry design, one of her wildlife ones, a little downy woodpecker. So they're sort of fun to do.
Thanks, Steve. There's a couple, 2 or 3 more up here.
Well, Steve Good had some hummingbird patterns. And the one he sent out recently, I wanted to cut, but I realized it was 3 layers. And I said, well, wait a minute, I got this live edge wood that I haven't started to use yet. So I said, well, let me, so I went digging back and found a different pattern that I liked. And so I cut this thing out from the live edge wood. So. And then I just colored the backer board. Stained it there, but they colored this red here, just had that pattern popped up because this color here just wouldn't come through. So this thing here just kind of gave it.
I haven't been doing a lot of scroll sawing, but I did cut this out with a scroll saw, the blank. And then I carve them and they call them fan birds, but on the way over here, I broke the tail. Anyway, I thought I'd show it.
Hold it, you know, hold it.
It's supposed to have the tail.
Right.
And if you would like to know how to make those, come to our show because we've got a couple people that do them and they demonstrate it there as well.
Can we use saddle horses as currency?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. You can pay for your admission with the dollar.
Do you have any patterns for us to now or no?
I could give a basic pattern to you here.
So this is, I'm not real proud of what I've made here, but actually this is a pattern that I made of a picture. And it was when we were down at the Midwest scroll saw thing down in Dubuque several years ago now. And it was kind of a funny scene of a classroom. And I thought of Dave Gotti when I look at this thing. That's why I brought it in today, especially. I just threw it on this backboard this week, but it shows, I'll bring it up here so you can see it. It shows a teacher in the, let's see, I gotta move it to the camera here. How come it's not moving? There it
I
goes.
was zooming.
So, so there's a teacher in the front of the class pointing to the blackboard. And then there's a smart kid in the front raising his hand. He wants to answer the question. And there's a little girl behind him. And she's kind of half raising her hand, kind of, I want to answer. And there's a guy behind him going to pull her ponytail. And then there's a studious girl behind.
The other way.
I'm trying to do both ways. Studious girl behind her that's reading a book while she's in. And there's a guy, of course, in the back sleeping. And it's in the little doggy on the little doggy there. Anyway, it's kind of fun. And again, I took it off a picture and cutting this, with the I put in a spiral blade to try to cut this, and it didn't come out very good.
Thank you, Warren.
One more.
Albert.
This was a pattern I got from my neighbor Keith. I thought it was intriguing. It says, fill me with your spirit. Then you turn it around, it says, guard me with your angels, which I thought was really, really neat and kind of fun challenge, you know, to do something different like that. Yeah, it was fun.
You know where that pattern's from?
I don't know. Keith, you know where that's from?
I don't remember like that.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember where I got it anyway. Yeah. I could get one, so you could have it on the website.
Yeah, yeah, very nice.
So when you mount that to the wall, do you just put a nail through the middle? So you can rotate and spin it?
I can't figure out how to mount it. So I might just use like a picture frame. Or you know, an easel, and then you can turn it on your, depending on your mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, an interesting project, yes. All right, anything else anybody has? Well, let's get out there and enjoy the warmest day on March 2nd in 150 years. So let's enjoy it. Thank you very much. Good meeting.
Done early. Good.
Yes.
Good going, Mike.
150 years.